When a married woman between 30 and 40 begins to emotionally open up to someone, it's rarely by accident. Every word, every silence, every glance, it carries meaning. And if you can read those signs, you'll understand her heart long before she ever says a word. When a woman reaches her 30s or 40s, something inside her transforms, not just emotionally, but spiritually. The experiences she's lived through have reshaped her understanding of love, connection, and intimacy. In her 20s, attraction might have been impulsive. A smile, a few charming words, or a sense of adventure could ignite interest. But by her 30s, she has learned the hard way that attraction alone doesn't sustain emotional peace. Now she craves something deeper, not the kind of connection that burns bright and fades, but one that remains steady even when the spark is no longer loud. Emotional maturity becomes her foundation. It's not that she's stopped feeling, she feels more deeply than ever before. But she's learned to filter her emotions through wisdom instead of impulse. She no longer responds to surface-level attention because she's learned how easily people can say the right things without meaning them. She observes before she trusts. She listens to the consistency of actions more than the poetry of words. Emotional maturity gives her the ability to pause before reacting. It's not indifference, it's self-awareness. When she feels drawn to someone, she doesn't chase that feeling. Instead, she asks herself why she's drawn to that person. Is it emotional resonance or just temporary comfort? This internal dialogue is the silent strength of mature femininity. It's not visible to the world, but it defines how she chooses to connect. A woman in this stage of life has likely been through heartbreaks, misunderstandings, or unfulfilled expectations that taught her what emotional instability costs. She now values emotional safety far more than excitement. She doesn't need someone who makes her heartbeat race for a moment. She needs someone who helps her heartbeat stay calm. Emotional maturity means she's learned to balance her passion with peace. She knows that constant intensity can be exhausting, that chemistry without emotional grounding eventually becomes chaos. So she becomes selective, not because she's arrogant, but because she understands the emotional price of giving herself to the wrong person. This kind of woman also learns that not everyone deserves access to her emotional world. In her younger years, she might have believed that love is about giving all of herself without hesitation. Now she realizes that real love begins with emotional discernment. She no longer romanticizes potential, she respects patterns. If someone's energy feels inconsistent or unclear, she instinctively steps back. It's not out of fear, it's an act of emotional intelligence. She knows how to protect her peace without explaining why. Her silence becomes her boundary. Her distance becomes her wisdom. Emotional maturity teaches her that not everything broken needs fixing, and not every connection needs closure. Sometimes walking away gracefully is the most powerful form of self-respect. In this phase of her life, her attraction shifts from appearance to presence. She's drawn to emotional steadiness, to a kind of quiet confidence that doesn't seek validation. She can sense emotional chaos immediately because she's learned to recognize it within herself in earlier years. Now, when she finds someone emotionally grounded, she feels safe, not because that person is perfect, but because their energy doesn't demand constant proving. She doesn't want to be impressed anymore. She wants to be understood, and she's willing to wait for that kind of connection, even if it means standing alone for a while. Emotional maturity also means she takes responsibility for her emotions instead of projecting them. She no longer blames others for how she feels. She understands that emotional regulation is her power. When she's hurt, she processes it privately before reacting publicly. When she's confused, she takes time to reflect instead of seeking external validation. That doesn't make her cold. It makes her centered. Her emotions still run deep, but she's learned to navigate them with grace. She understands that love built on emotional impulse fades quickly, but love rooted in emotional intelligence endures through silence, space, and time. Her conversations become more intentional. She's not interested in small talk or shallow validation. She wants depth, mental, emotional, and spiritual. She values people who bring clarity, not confusion, peace, not pressure. This emotional refinement is what separates her from who she once was. The things that used to excite her now exhaust her. She no longer chases butterflies. She nurtures balance. Her heart still beats with warmth, but now it's guided by reason, not restlessness. Emotional maturity doesn't make her immune to pain. It makes her aware of what truly matters. Emotional safety, shared values, mutual respect, and the kind of connection that allows both people to grow without losing themselves. Selective vulnerability is one of the most profound signs of a woman's emotional growth. By the time she reaches her 30s or 40s, she has learned that not everyone who listens deserves to hear her truth. She has experienced how easily openness can be misunderstood, how quickly emotional honesty can be used against her, and how exhausting it feels to constantly explain herself to people who only hear what they want to hear. So she becomes more intentional with what she shares and with whom she shares it. Vulnerability, for her, is no longer about being transparent with everyone. It's about revealing layers only to those who make her feel safe, respected, and emotionally seen. This selectiveness is not guardedness. It's wisdom born from pain. It's a soft strength that says, I can open up, but only when I know my emotions won't be mishandled. When she starts to get close to someone, she doesn't dive straight into the depths of her emotions. Instead, she gently tests the emotional waters. She'll share something slightly personal, not too deep, not too light, and she'll observe the response. Does the other person listen with empathy, or do they respond with judgment? Do they hold space for her words, or do they try to fix her immediately? These small tests matter to her because they reveal emotional safety. If she senses that someone can handle her vulnerability without exploiting it, she allows the next layer to unfold. But if the response feels dismissive, invasive, or insincere, she retreats quietly, not out of fear, but self-protection. She knows that her emotions are not entertainment, they are sacred. A woman with selective vulnerability carries emotional history in her heart. She's been through moments where she opened up too quickly, where she gave people the map to her soul before realizing they weren't meant to stay. Those experiences taught her that trust must be earned slowly, not demanded instantly. Now she observes energy, not promises. She listens to tone more than words. She notices how someone reacts when she expresses discomfort or uncertainty, because how a person responds to her truth reveals more about their emotional maturity than any declaration of care ever could. For her, vulnerability isn't about attention. It's about emotional alignment. She reveals herself only when she feels her openness will be met with presence, not pity. Selective vulnerability also changes how she communicates. She no longer overshares to feel connected. Instead, she shares meaningfully to build understanding. Her conversations become deeper, more intentional, filled with pauses that carry significance. When she speaks about her past, it's not for sympathy, but for connection. When she shares her fears, it's not because she's weak, but because she's brave enough to acknowledge them. Her emotional sharing is not impulsive. It's measured, grounded, and aware. She knows that not everyone can handle her depth, and she no longer tries to shrink herself to fit into shallow spaces. Her vulnerability is not a cry for validation. It's a quiet revelation of authenticity shown only to those who've earned it. And yet, despite her caution, she remains soft. Selective vulnerability does not harden her, it refines her. She still believes in emotional intimacy, in the beauty of being understood beyond words, but she's no longer desperate for it. She understands that emotional exposure is a gift, and gifts must be given with awareness. When she decides to open up, it's because something in her spirit feels recognized. She senses emotional safety not through perfection, but through consistency. Someone who listens when she speaks, respects when she's silent, and doesn't demand explanations for her boundaries. That's when she begins to reveal more. Her inner thoughts, her insecurities, her real emotions that she hides from the rest of the world. Selective vulnerability also carries a quiet elegance. It's in how she smiles while holding back tears, how she listens without interrupting, how she reveals parts of herself slowly, layer by layer, until trust feels mutual. She doesn't need dramatic confessions or emotional theatrics to feel close to someone. Her connection builds through steady presence, through shared understanding, through emotional patience. And this is where many misunderstand her. They think her reserve means disinterest, but in truth, it's depth in disguise. She's not distant, she's discerning. She knows that true intimacy isn't about how quickly two people open up, but how safely they can remain open over time. When a woman between the ages of 30 and 40 begins to develop feelings or emotional closeness towards someone, it rarely happens with grand gestures or obvious confessions. Instead, it shows up in quiet, almost invisible ways, through subtle shifts in her attention, her energy, and her emotional focus. These are not random changes. They are deeply intentional, often unspoken, yet full of meaning. A woman at this stage in life has learned that words can be misleading, but consistent attention never lies. She knows how to mask her feelings behind composure, but what she cannot hide is the way her awareness begins to orbit around the person who has emotionally touched her. She may not say much, but she begins to notice everything. The tone of your voice, the small details you mention in passing, the things you care about, she stores them quietly in her heart. Her attention becomes selective, precise, and thoughtful. This shift in attention is her first silent confession. When she starts remembering your favorite things, your habits, or the little stories you shared once, it's not coincidence. It's emotional investment disguised as curiosity. She starts to anticipate your moods, to sense when you're not yourself, even when you try to hide it. This isn't because she's trying to analyze you. It's because she's connected. Her emotional radar becomes attuned to your energy. She might not text more often, but when she does, her timing feels aligned with your emotions, as if she somehow feels when you need to be checked on. This emotional sensitivity isn't something she forces. It naturally grows when she feels a genuine bond forming. Her focus shifts from surface-level communication to emotional understanding, from what you say to how you feel when you say it. Subtle shifts in attention also appear in her behavior. She starts listening differently, not to reply, but to remember. Her mind begins to weave small fragments of your world into hers. You'll notice it in how she brings up something you said weeks ago, or how she remembers a passing comment you made without realizing it. For her, these small acts are not strategy, they're care. Emotional maturity has taught her that love isn't proven through intensity, but through consistency. So she doesn't chase, she notices. She doesn't overwhelm, she pays attention. These subtle gestures are her way of saying, "You matter," without having to use those words. She values presence over performance, and her quiet attentiveness becomes her language of connection. Another aspect of these subtle shifts lies in the way she gives her time and focus. She may start prioritizing conversations with you even in her busy routine. She'll make small but meaningful efforts, asking about your day, sharing thoughtful insights, or simply listening without distraction. In a world full of noise, her undivided attention becomes a rare form of affection. It's her way of making you feel seen in a way others don't. She doesn't need to announce her care because it shows through her awareness. The difference is in her tone when she speaks to you, the calmness in her presence, and the emotional safety you feel when she's around. These subtleties are her emotional language, quiet, steady, and genuine. At this point in her life, she's learned to control her impulses, so she won't make impulsive moves or exaggerated displays of affection. But her attention will give her away. You might notice her observing you in moments when no one else is watching. You'll feel it in how her energy seems more grounded when you're near, how she engages a little deeper, listens a little longer, and responds a little more sincerely. She may start showing small acts of thoughtfulness, sending a message when you least expect it, remembering important dates, or offering emotional support when you don't ask for it. To an untrained eye, it may seem subtle, but to someone who understands emotional nuance, these are clear signs of a woman whose heart is quietly leaning closer. These shifts are not performative, they come from authenticity. A mature woman doesn't use attention to manipulate or impress. She uses it to connect, to build trust slowly, silently, but steadily. Her awareness becomes her gift. She knows that real intimacy grows not through constant declarations, but through mindful presence. Her attention is not scattered, it's intentional. She has learned that where she focuses her energy determines the emotional depth of her relationships. And when her attention starts to revolve around someone, it's not just attraction, it's her way of saying that she has found something or someone worthy of her emotional presence. Nonverbal intimacy is one of the most powerful and misunderstood languages a mature woman speaks. By the time a woman reaches her 30s or 40s, she has evolved far beyond the surface level of communication. Words for her have their place, but they are no longer the main way she connects. She has learned that silence, eye contact, gestures, and energy often reveal more truth than any conversation ever could. When she begins to grow close to someone, you won't always see it through direct expression. You'll feel it in the quiet ways she begins to let her guard down. Her eyes soften, her tone shifts, her body language becomes relaxed, and her energy feels open rather than defensive. She may not verbalize her emotions, but her presence begins to communicate comfort, safety, and trust. Nonverbal intimacy is not about physicality alone. It's about the emotional comfort that manifests in her quiet, natural closeness to someone she feels emotionally aligned with. When a woman reaches this level of emotional maturity, she knows that real connection cannot be forced. It unfolds naturally through emotional energy, through presence, attention, and subtle gestures. A simple glance from her can hold an entire conversation. The way she looks at someone she cares about is different, softer, steadier, more grounded. Her eyes don't just look, they listen. They reveal comfort and curiosity at once. She starts to notice small details in the person's face, their expressions, their way of being, and through that awareness, she communicates care. When she sits near someone she feels connected to, her body naturally turns toward them. It's not a conscious act of flirtation. It's instinctive alignment. Her body language becomes an emotional reflection of how safe and emotionally seen she feels. You'll notice nonverbal intimacy in her stillness, the way she becomes fully present around the person she's drawn to. She's not distracted by her phone, not rushing the conversation, not thinking about what comes next. She's simply there, grounded and calm. That stillness is one of her most intimate gestures because it means she's comfortable being emotionally exposed without needing to fill the silence. A younger version of her might have felt pressure to speak or perform to keep someone's attention, but now she understands that true closeness doesn't need constant words. She allows silence to exist between two people without discomfort. That silence becomes a space of emotional connection where mutual understanding replaces verbal validation. In that quietness, her presence speaks volumes. It says she trusts you enough to be unguarded. Nonverbal intimacy also reveals itself through small, almost unnoticeable acts of care. A gentle touch on the arm during a conversation, a supportive smile in a crowded room, or a soft glance when words aren't enough. These gestures carry more emotional weight than grand declarations. When she begins to feel emotionally close, she'll unconsciously mirror your movements, match your tone, and synchronize her energy with yours. It's not manipulation, it's empathy in motion. Her emotional body begins to attune to yours. She picks up on your tension, your excitement, your unease, and her presence subtly adapts to make you feel balanced. That's the essence of mature intimacy, emotional responsiveness without needing verbal confirmation. In moments of nonverbal connection, her defenses dissolve. She might sit closer without realizing it. Her laughter becomes softer, her eyes linger longer, and her movements slow down as if she's trying to stretch time in your presence. Physical closeness, when it happens, isn't impulsive but deeply intentional. She values emotional resonance over touch, yet when she does choose to be physically near someone, it carries the weight of trust. Even something as simple as sharing comfortable silence or exchanging a long, unspoken glance becomes deeply intimate because it's real. It's not about impressing or convincing, it's about feeling emotionally synchronized. Nonverbal intimacy for her is sacred. It's the part of her connection that doesn't need validation or explanation. It's built through emotional consistency and genuine presence. She notices how someone's energy feels, calm, chaotic, safe, or uncertain, and she responds with equal emotional awareness. When she sits with someone she's drawn to, her body language becomes its own dialogue, one of acceptance, warmth, and emotional understanding. She may not speak, but everything about her presence communicates care, trust, and depth. It's the language of connection that requires no translation, only emotional awareness to understand it. Emotional reciprocity is the invisible balance that defines how a mature woman connects and sustains closeness with another person. By the time she reaches her 30s or 40s, she understands that relationships are not measured by how much one gives, but by the equilibrium between giving and receiving, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. She's been through enough one-sided connections to recognize the difference between someone who listens and someone who truly understands. In her younger years, she may have given freely, offering emotional support, empathy, and care to people who couldn't return it with the same sincerity. Those experiences didn't make her bitter. They made her conscious. Now she gives with awareness. Emotional reciprocity becomes her quiet boundary, the unspoken rule that her energy will flow only where it is met with respect, warmth, and emotional consistency. When she starts to grow emotionally close to someone, her way of connecting becomes deeply intentional. She invests her emotions slowly, not because she's hesitant to love, but because she observes how the other person responds. Does he listen with genuine curiosity? Does he make space for her emotions, or does he avoid them? A mature woman doesn't seek constant validation, but she notices the balance of emotional effort. If she reaches out, she pays attention to whether the other person reaches back. If she opens up, she observes whether her vulnerability is met with empathy or indifference. Her sense of connection depends not on words, but on emotional reflection. Emotional reciprocity is that reflection, when care, attention, and understanding move in both directions, not just one. She begins to mirror the emotional tone of the relationship. If she feels emotionally nourished, she gives more freely. Her energy expands naturally in the presence of emotional safety. But if she senses distance or neglect, she quietly withdraws, not out of punishment, but protection. She's no longer willing to pour from an empty cup. Reciprocity, for her, is not about keeping score. It's about emotional harmony. She believes that closeness should feel balanced, where both people feel seen, valued, and supported. When she notices imbalance, she doesn't confront it with drama. She corrects it with distance. Her silence becomes a way of teaching what her words no longer need to explain. It's her way of saying, if I'm the only one giving, then this connection isn't real. When emotional reciprocity exists, she becomes radiant. Her warmth, her laughter, and her openness flow naturally. She gives more because she feels emotionally safe to do so. This mutual exchange allows her to express her femininity, compassion, and emotional intelligence without fear of being drained. She begins to nurture deeper conversations, share her inner thoughts, and offer her time with genuine joy. She notices when the other person reciprocates, remembering her feelings, showing up when it matters, offering emotional steadiness instead of empty reassurance. These gestures, small yet powerful, make her feel valued beyond words. It's not about grand declarations, it's about consistent emotional presence. Emotional reciprocity also transforms how she handles conflict and emotional differences. A younger version of her might have tried to fix everything, over-explaining herself to maintain peace. But now she values mutual accountability. She expects emotional honesty, not perfection. She wants to be heard, but she also listens with empathy. She understands that emotional maturity is not about winning arguments, but preserving understanding. When both people share that mindset, reciprocity thrives. It becomes a silent rhythm between two people who know how to care without controlling, to give without losing themselves, and to love without demanding constant reassurance. In this stage of life, her emotional standards become grounded in mutual energy. She notices who matches her consistency, who checks in with genuine care, who remembers how she feels even without reminders. These small moments carry enormous meaning because they tell her she's emotionally valued. Reciprocity isn't about equality in quantity, but equality in intention. It's about feeling emotionally balanced, where her empathy is returned, her support acknowledged, and her openness respected. When she feels that exchange, she lets down her final layers of protection. Her emotional presence deepens because she senses that her care is not being taken for granted. When a married woman between 30 and 40 begins to develop emotional closeness with someone, her heart rarely moves in a straight line. Beneath her calm demeanor lies an ongoing inner dialogue, a quiet war between her emotions and her logic. She feels deeply, but she thinks carefully. Every emotion that rises inside her is met with reflection, hesitation, and often silent questioning. This is not because she doesn't want to feel. It's because she has learned through experience how much emotional vulnerability can cost her. She's aware that one emotional misstep can ripple through every part of her life, her relationships, her peace, her self-image. So when she starts to sense emotional attraction or connection, she doesn't dive in blindly. She pauses, analyzes, and rethinks. She may feel warmth in her heart, but she'll keep her expression steady. She may want to open up, but she'll test whether it's safe first. Her caution is not coldness. It's self-preservation, born from the wisdom of emotional survival. This inner conflict shows up in small, quiet moments, in the way she smiles but looks away quickly, in how her tone softens but her words remain measured. There's a constant tug between desire and discipline. Her emotions pull her toward closeness, yet her experience reminds her of the consequences of letting her guard down too soon. She questions her own motives. Am I seeking connection, or am I just missing something within myself? Is this real understanding, or just emotional comfort in disguise? These questions live in her mind long before she ever expresses how she feels. She's cautious because she knows that emotional chemistry can feel safe in the moment and still be dangerous later. The older she gets, the more she values stability over excitement, peace over passion, and understanding over intensity. But that doesn't mean she's stopped longing for connection. It means she's learned to protect her heart while still allowing it to feel. Her caution doesn't make her emotionless. It makes her emotionally intelligent. She can sense when someone's presence stirs something deep inside her, but instead of reacting impulsively, she observes how those emotions evolve. She notices if that person's energy calms her or disturbs her peace. If it feels uncertain, she pulls back, not to end the connection, but to gain clarity. This is the quiet discipline of a mature heart, one that has been both broken and rebuilt. She understands that emotions can deceive, that attraction can blur boundaries, and that real connection requires emotional safety. So she allows herself to feel, but within invisible limits. Her warmth may still flow, her empathy may still shine, but there's always a watchful awareness behind her actions, a kind of emotional filter that protects her from repeating old patterns. The conflict within her often intensifies when she begins to truly care. That's when her emotions start to challenge her boundaries. She may find herself thinking more often about the person, feeling their absence, or replaying conversations in her mind. Yet, even in those moments of vulnerability, she resists letting her emotions take full control. There's always a part of her holding back, quietly reminding her, be careful, feel, but don't fall. It's not fear that holds her back. It's experience whispering truth. She knows that love without awareness can lead to regret, that emotional intensity without mutual respect can leave scars. Her inner caution is not a wall. It's a gate that opens slowly, only when she feels safe enough to be her full self. This delicate balance between emotion and restraint defines her emotional depth. She doesn't let her feelings dictate her choices, yet she doesn't deny them either. She lets them exist, breathe, and unfold naturally while maintaining her emotional integrity. This constant state of self-checking can be exhausting, but it's also what gives her strength. It keeps her grounded in reality, even when her emotions drift toward fantasy. Her caution helps her separate emotional truth from emotional illusion, helping her protect her peace while still honoring her feelings. She understands that real closeness cannot grow in chaos. It can only grow in emotional clarity. And so she allows herself to feel everything, the curiosity, the attraction, the longing, and the fear, while silently reminding herself to move slowly, to listen to her intuition, and to never confuse emotional connection with emotional safety.